Welcome back for another podcast episode of Hangin with Mr. Francis. I am your host, Mr. Francis, and you are tuning in to the podcast, episode 26, Heart and Soul. Now, before we get into it, I plugged in the new intro, if you've seen it before the podcast started. New intro going forward, which will be used on the podcast. Now, before we get into things here, I would like to take a moment to advise, and I know a lot of people think when they see the link that this is a video streaming podcast, but unfortunately it's audio only at this time. Hopefully in the near future we'll introduce a video type of podcast, but for now it's strictly audio. I may start to include that information as a lot of people are not familiar with that. I do apologize, but that is just how it is for now. Even though it's on YouTube, YouTube does house audio only podcasts as well. But I feel like a lot of times people are really aiming for it to be video, and that will come soon. It will come with time, obviously. Now, another thing I would like to mention is officially launched the first episode of Digital Dads featuring myself and Jimmy, which was a segment of the Hangin with Mr. Francis podcast, which took place the first time, episode 2 of Hangin with Mr. Francis podcast, when we were on Mixcloud. And a year later, we officially launched the first episode 1.0 of Digital Dads through the Altered Optic Media Group YouTube page. Check that out. The link will be in the bio of the description below. And yeah, it's doing numbers. I think we've surpassed 100 plus views now. That is amazing. I am very, very grateful for outpouring of support that I've received. Even though it is an hour and almost an hour and a half, and we're going to try to cut that down. But given that's the first episode, we're getting through some learning curves, trying to minimize certain things. And it's the first episode. It's the first installment. So we're gonna go a bit over our time. We were aiming for 45 minutes. Unfortunately, that almost doubled. So we're slowly getting the hang of it, and hopefully we can get it down so it's a little bit more reasonable, because I know a lot of people don't have an hour and a half to listen to an audio podcast, even though you can, but strictly through YouTube it's very hard to do that because it does use a lot more bandwidth. But with that being said, before we begin the podcast, again, this is episode 26, Heart and Soul. But before we begin the podcast, I would like to give a shout out to our sponsor, Bold and Wonderful Digital Prints, strictly through Etsy, etsy.com. But if you would like to click the link in the description below, it will be there as well. But if you want, it is Bold and Wonderful Digital Print, and that is through Etsy. You can do that search, or you can strictly go to the address that will be in the description, as I mentioned. And I'll mention it. It will be boldandwonderful.ca, and that is bold and is it the and symbol? No, it's just bold and wonderful. Yeah, just keep it simple there. All right. So the episode, as I mentioned, is called Heart and Soul. Now I know it's been a year since I've started this podcast. If you can notice from the name of the last episode of episode 25, 1 year later. And what a year it has been. What a year it's been. I mean, a year ago I was just becoming a father, right, to a beautiful little girl who's over a year now. And she's growing. She's very smart. And she's too smart for her own good, as I mentioned before. And I think I even mentioned the last episode that a year ago I went through something. It was one of those mental blocks that I went through, and it took me out. I know a lot of times we stress about being physical and keeping our physical body fit, but sometimes we need to keep our mental mind frame fit as well. And I hit a roadblock last year, a mental block, I would say, and it took me out. It took me out. It really did. It was a wake up call, I would say. Not necessarily I was doing anything crazy or anything like that, but sometimes we gotta hit that path in life that will bring us back down to earth. And as I mentioned, I wasn't doing anything crazy, but sometimes we need something to humble us, to make us realize, there's a lot more. And there was a lot going on, given the fact that we're in a 1 year into a lockdown, and so forth was happening. It was a lot to take in. It was definitely a lot to take in. Though it made me think about a lot of things from last year till now. And I remember over my span of my life, I'm in my 30s now, halfway in my 30s, but over the last couple of years of my life, going back 10 to 15 years, there was a time in my life when a lot of people turned their back on me, right? And I'm not upset by that. At the time, I may have been, but as I continue to get older, I start to realize a lot of the things that happened needed to happen in order for me to grow, in order for me to understand myself a lot better. And I remember someone saying that I'm a nobody. And they're right. I am a nobody. And I don't consider myself to be anyone else but myself. But I didn't allow that to dictate who I am as a person. Now, at the time, yeah, it really hit me differently. But compared to now, there are times in life when you're going to get told by many different individuals that you're not worth anything, you're not anything. They might say some real negative things to you. And sometimes they're right. And a lot of times they're projecting their type of anger towards you because they're not happy with themselves. It's hard to differentiate it sometimes. You as an individual got to take that step back and be like, did they mean that with ultimate respect or just disrespect, right? And that's where you got to look deep into yourself. And, as I mentioned, I agree. I'm a nobody. I'm not better than anybody else in this world. But what I'm going to say is being a somebody to myself and to those who matter is what really matters the most, right? Like being a good father, being a good husband, being a good partner, being a good son, being a good cousin or a family member or friend, just all together, right? That is the main focus of being that somebody to those people that matter the most. Because to anyone else who don't know me, I'm a nobody. Am I trying to become famous or anything else? I don't want to be famous. I don't want to be anything more than myself. And whatever comes with that is growth. How my life has changed over the last 5 years is amazing. And I think the reason why I came to realize that is because I look back at my old phone and seen past conversations I've had with several individuals. And I looked at the conversations via text, and I even remember how I used to say and speak and do things. And I realized, wow, I've grown a lot. I try to understand and wrap my head around, like, where was my headspace at those times? And you can never really understand it then, but you can understand that right now you've seen your growth, your element of where you've come from and where you are now. It's hard to grasp where your mindset would have been. And who knows, because where I am now may not be where I am a year or 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now. Like, I'm going to continue to grow, continue to evolve, but I can definitely say I've evolved myself into being a little more calm, even though I do get a little, emotions always get the best of us sometimes. But how I approach things now compared to 5 years ago or 10 years ago is completely different. My outlook has changed and shifted. Within the last year, I wouldn't say leaps and bounds, but it has changed a lot. And I think becoming a father and having a daughter, at first it was new to me, right? I'm still learning because she's going to continue to grow. She's going to continue to teach me things. to show me my flaws and make me understand things is very blessing. And as I mentioned, I'm not trying to be famous doing this podcast thing. I'm just trying to bring my visions of life, or my visions to life, I should say. As you know, life is short. We have a short span of life on this earth. To be fair, like, I remember the days when I was just going into high school, and now here I am. I was going into high school, like, I don't want to put a number to my age, but I was going to high school like a while back. It's not it seems like just yesterday, but it was a long time ago when you really write it on paper. And I realized the last couple of years is that, life is short. Seeing people pass away suddenly. My grandmother passed away. Obviously, when the older generation passes away, it's inevitable, right? Because they're older and they've lived majority of their life, right? And I want to live a long life as well, right? Anyone would. But to see a lot of people who are young, like seeing rappers and all these people die at such a young age, it's heartbreaking. So this is why I took the moment last year and I wrote a letter. I know this is going to sound weird, but I wrote a letter to my daughter. And the way I felt, I really thought, like, not that anything was going to happen to me, but it made me write this because if something was to happen, knock on wood, but if something was to happen, I want to make sure she understands how much I cared for her and stuff of that nature. It really made me look at life in a different light. Did it change me completely? Not entirely, because there's a lot of things I need to continue to work on with myself. And a lot of times we beat ourselves up and not realizing that we can't change overnight. It's an ongoing process. And this is why I put my heart and soul into anything I do now, because, life is short and tomorrow is never promised. And you cannot stop believing in yourself. Don't stop believing in yourself. Because the moment you stop believing in yourself is the moment nothing will work out. It all begins with you. And going through my life, I never had a lot of people to encourage me to do certain things. Like, I had a few people here and there, but I never had someone on me being like, yo, do this or do that. Like, you'll hear the odd moments of people saying, do stuff like that, or I've had people do that. But then I realized there are going to be people in your life that are not very happy with you, right? Jealousy. They don't want to see you do good, so they try to lead you astray. But then there's going to be ones that actually care about you and stuff like that. I didn't have a lot of positive individuals in my life, right? Yeah, they may have told me one or two things, but I didn't have that centerpiece in my life. And as I got older, I started to realize, I've seen everything happen over the years of my life. And I think the biggest thing that ever happened to me was meeting the person I met a few years back. The icing on the cake is becoming a father. And as I mentioned just not long ago, was that it was new to me. And then to see the growth, see how she learns, and it's a beautiful feeling. It's one of the greatest feelings you could ever, experience in life. Watching your own child grow. And then they go through certain things and you got to be there for them. You got to teach them things. And not only are you teaching them, they're teaching you patience, And I think that was the thing I was missing in my life, was that ultimate patience. And as I said, I'm continuously growing, and I'm continuously learning more about myself, learning more about my peace. And I'm trying to attain peace, but I'm also trying to make sure I leave a great solid foundation for my family, for my loved ones, and to take the time to reflect on what matters and not focus too much on the material things, because I feel like in this day and age, a lot of us focus too much on material things. A lot of us. Like, money comes and goes, but you got to enjoy the journey. The journey is what matters the most, because you can make money, you can lose money just like that, but you can always make it back. But time, through that journey, you can never get it back. It remains a memory, but you can never get that back. And I think the main aspect is seeing how the first year of my daughter's life but pass so quickly. I was like, wow. I've seen other individuals that I've known for over years and so forth of my life, seeing they had kids at a younger age and seeing where their kids are right now. And it's like, damn, your kid was like a year old and now they're like almost a teenager. It goes by really fast, and you don't take that into consideration because you're just living life. So to close off, this wasn't gonna be a long episode. This was just me just speaking on my experiences in life. And to anyone that's listening, live life. Don't worry about the small things. Those small things that don't matter. Worry about the small things that do matter, like spending time with your family, telling the right people that you love them. And if you have a family of kids, or spend time with your kids. Obviously, in the time we live in right now, money is something that, with the inflation and all the things that are going on, obviously you got to make the money to survive and take care of your family. But when you get that moment to take time and spend it with your family and enjoy every moment, every second, every breath, do it. You got to do it. Because tomorrow is never promised. It's never promised. Believe me, it's never promised. I saw things mentally in my mind when everything happened last year that struck a lot of fear in me. I didn't allow the fear to dictate my life. But it's something that I'm trying to use as a fuel to achieve my goals, and I continue to achieve my goals, and I will always continue and aim forward. Sometimes I wish I did a lot of things sooner, but it's never too late to live your dreams and to do what's right. So, as I mentioned, this is me pouring my heart and soul into letting you know that you just got to do what you got to do and make sure it all matters. Thank you for tuning in for another episode of Hangin with Mr. Francis. Again, I'm your host, Mr. Francis, and this was episode 26, Heart and Soul. And I just want to leave you off with this. You don't always have to take big steps in life, but if you take little steps, when you look back after a couple years, you realize those little steps lead to bigger ones. I appreciate everyone and anyone who listened. Thanks for your support. I'll see you in the next episode.